We went to the Smokies on a regular basis. We'd go camping. We're very much outdoor type people. And we'd go camping and horseback riding and such up in the Smokies. And one time during one of our drives to the Smoky Mountain National Park, we saw some motorcycle riders touring through. And I said, that's the way to see the park. So as soon as I got home, I went and got my endorsement and went out and bought my first motorcycle. And we immediately started riding all over the place, all around the area. And had a lot of great little adventures going to the different bike events and just out riding. The first long distance ride we did, an overnight stay, was down to Fort Myers. We rode the bike on President's Day weekend. We had a long weekend and there was a cold front coming through, so we kind of thought about it and hesitated a little bit, but we thought, no problem, we're ahead of the front. And there was rain on our heels as we left. But we got down to Fort Myers. We'd never been down there in all the time we'd lived in Florida. So we decided to check the area out. Next thing you know, we're in Key West at Sloppy Joe's. We're pounding down margaritas, calling our friends, saying, guess where we are? That was a marvelous trip. It was very impromptu. And that's one of the wonderful things about Donna, is that she is so spontaneous about things. She has a lust for adventure, and she egged me on everywhere we went. It was never any controversy about it. It was, let's go. So the next big trip that my wife had in mind is a trip to Glacier National Park, Montana. She had seen a documentary on the Travel Channel about Glacier National Park. And we've also heard some other bikers mention that that's just supposed to be an amazing place to go ride through. So that's the next spot that she wants to see. Took off June 1st, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and headed out of here. And of course it was about as hot and muggy as it could possibly be. At 3 o'clock in the morning, one would think it's going to be nice and cool out. Nice ride. No, the air was so thick it was like water. It was just steamy out. So headed up through Florida. Normally we like to stay off of the interstates. The ride out of Chattanooga the next morning went through plains and farm fields and some mountainous areas that were just absolutely gorgeous. The changing scenery was amazing. Continued on across the plains of Nebraska, western Nebraska, and eventually came to the state line of Wyoming. Cruising north through Wyoming, the mountains were just absolutely breathtaking. Finally, I hit the Chief Joseph Parkway, which ended up leading into the Beartooth Pass, the western side of the Beartooth Pass. Woke up in Cook City, and the forecast was for rain later in the morning, and by the time I had breakfast, it was downpouring. But I hadn't ridden 2,700 miles to across the country to be in Yellowstone and not explore it. Yellowstone is absolutely breathtaking with the mud pots and the sulfur pits. It's a breathtaking place to see. Next day, headed out of the Yellowstone area and headed north into Montana, and the rain was continuing. It continued to drizzle, and the drizzle would go to heavy rain. I was really longing, after having been riding through so much rain and being soaked so much, to finally be getting into Whitefish. Late that afternoon, I finally arrived and got checked in. Woke up that morning and it was time to head into Glacier National Park. And it's the destination I've been shooting for, so I was all pumped up about that. And passed through several little towns on the way out of Whitefish to get to the park itself. And it was a beautiful little ride going out there. Once I got to the entrance of the park, there's the ranger station. So I stopped at the ranger station, because you have to buy a pass to get in. And the ranger told me that she sold me the ticket and gave me a map and told me that unfortunately the park was closed about a third of the way in. And I said, "What do you mean it's closed?" It says, "Well, they still have snow that they're still clearing from the wintertime." And I'm thinking to myself, this is June, you haven't cleared the snow yet? And they says, "Well, you can ride about 15 miles into the park, and that's about as far as you can get on the west side." So it was very disappointing. It was downright heartbreaking to know that I wasn't going to be able to go all the way through the park itself. But there wasn't much of anything I could do about it, so I just kind of shook my head in disappointment and cruised on into the park and headed as far on going to the Sun Road as I could. The road is everything that anybody who's heard anything about Glacier National Park, it's absolutely magnificent. You first come across a lake, Lake McDonald. It's a blue like I have never seen in a lake. It's this deep blue, looks like they've colored the water. Absolutely gorgeous. It's clearest lake I've ever seen. You can look out towards the middle of the lake, and as it gets deeper and deeper and deeper blue, but rocks way off the side of the shoreline. You can make out everything, and then it's all backdropped by these magnificent, beautiful mountains. The road continued to wind around, and all along the way, little waterfalls are coming down the sides of the mountains. The water kind of raging at that time from the snow melt, but just absolutely beautiful, winding around, following the lake the whole way, and finally came to that 15-mile point. And it was at an area called Avalanche, and that's where everything came to a stop. The rangers had the road blocked off, and again, that just piqued my disappointment in the whole situation of not being able to go all the way through. So I parked the bike at a little area they had there and walked around and took some photos and just reflected on what I had seen so far during the trip. Above me, rising above us, was a tall rocky peak mountain, and the snow melting at the top was creating this cascade waterfall that was coming down the side of the mountain. It was just absolutely amazing. There wasn't anything I could do about the situation that it was closed. I just had to sit there and deal with that fact, knowing that someday in the future I'm definitely going to have to come back and see that again when I can actually ride all the way through the entire park. In the spring of 2009, my wife Donna was catching the flu, as were a lot of the people at work that I worked with. And it was a flu that kind of came and went. People were getting reoccurring bouts of it. So we took her and had her admitted to the hospital, and they checked that and found it wasn't pneumonia. And then after some scans had found that she was diagnosed with some sort of tumors. After doing a biopsy on it, they found that it was lymphoma that she had. My wife went through a series of chemo. She actually went through it with flying colors, and by August 6th, she had a clean bill of health from the PET scans. 1 month later, upon testing, they found that she had the cancer reoccurring. While in the hospital, she started having problems breathing, and they took her down to ICU. It was about another hour, 2 hours later, the doctors called me in, and they gave me the news that my wife's liver had failed, that the cancer was attacking her, and that there was nothing else that they could do at that point. That basically they were telling me my wife was not going to make it through the rest of the day. My wife passed away on November 19th at 5 p.m. and basically the only thing I could do is to pull up a chair beside her bed and hold her the entire time until she finally passed away from us. My message to everybody would be, don't forget the person you're with. Things change quickly in life, and to lose somebody and have words that you still want to tell them and not be able to is heartbreaking. I went on this trip to Yellowstone and with the destination of Glacier National Park because this is the trip that my wife wanted to go on. This was not me taking the trip. This was not me making this ride across country. This was her doing this, but she was using me to do so. This was a journey of love.